Everybody hear me? Everyone hear me okay? No? Is it on? Okay. Well, thank you so much for packing so much content into the short time that we gave you to do these talks. And as I said earlier, like, I'm really thinking of this, I'm thinking of this as opening up into other conversations. So even our conversation here, which will be short, hopefully that it expands as we go through the 2 days. That's my productive way of looking at the schedule and what we have for it. What I wanted to ask was connected to language, which it seemed was a recurring theme through all of your works. But a language not sort of in your practice, but outside of it. So I think that what's happening in your work is incredibly complex in a way that discourse around it hasn't really necessarily caught up with. So my question really is, as someone who writes about art, who's an art historian, an art critic, you have this opportunity here. What kinds of frames or contexts would you like to see your work positioned in that it hasn't been seen in? Or has there been a frame or context that your work has been a part of that you found incredibly empowering? The idea is I want to see what kinds of new publics we can create from your work beyond the theme of this exhibition that very much connects to genealogy. So again, just what kinds of frames or contexts would you like your work to be seen in that maybe it's not being seen in?
Maybe I can get started, because the way I want my work to be seen is, with language, I want people to experience it as shapes and lines. Because I talked about, it's like language, if you don't understand, it just becomes shapes and lines, you don't know. And I want people to experience that basically, and my point is also to, just like we have, music has language, even poetry. Poetry, it's not just all about the making a narrative or something, it's more about the words used in a poetry. A poetry just changes if you change the words, right? So that's why it's very important. And that's why sometimes when we translate, for example, Ghalib and Faz, they're such wonderful poets, but when you translate, you lose a lot of it in the translation. So, what I'm trying to do is that to make, theater, you have a play, drama, but when even we have the acting and all that involved, it's, on a different level. So that's what I am attempting to do, that to make the language be experienced as shapes and forms, as opposed to maybe reading, the nonsense, Like Alice is a good example, is that, it has logic, but, it doesn't make sense. So that's my attempt.
I think for me, I don't want, maybe I don't have any desire to have. Okay, it's always away from my mouth. Yeah, so I don't really want to sort of, have any kind of control once my work outside of my mind and my hand and outside my studio. I just want to, live its own life. So although definitely, it addresses a certain public, definitely, and they probably don't want to look at it the way I want them to look at it. So either I want to have too much control of it, or either I just want to let it food free. Sense.
Let's see if this one works. Yes. I've used text, but text something that I just borrow from that visual vernacular. And it's, I guess maybe I'm also aware that my audience is mainly Western, so I'm not so much concerned about it being read and being understood as much as it becomes that part of that visual language overall. And even if it is text, it means something to me, but I know where it's coming from and what it means, but it just adds another layer to the work, but it's not absolutely necessary for that. I guess my work is more visual language heavy rather than text heavy, so.
I think for me, it is the question on how I would like the work to be seen. It's less important. I think for me, what I'm interested in the discussions that we're going to have in these panels is that how institutions like, mainstream institutions like the Met, the MoMA, all these, especially like the Metropolitan Museum, like where does the tradition that a lot of us are engaged in is reflected? I don't see the reflections outside in that respect, and for me, that's sort of the lack of that then makes me either it's fodder for my work, or it is something that, like I wonder, how much of the art world is inspiring for me to engage in. And what does that translate into? What are the alternative places of being engaged as not just an artist, as where the discourse is going to happen, where you have to still participate in the art world, but how it's not just even the critique of the excessive commercialness of the art world, but more in terms of the responsible reflection of a different trajectory of tradition, so the lack of that. It's like the complexity of one's work is never going to be understood if the spaces that one is engaged and around with are not invested in it.
Yeah, just to bounce off of that, I think this kind of gets to the crux of my point, which is that the institutions, the critics, the writers, they're not doing those kinds of things. They're not being creative enough, and I'm part of that, mess. I put myself in that. So I think it's sometimes a great thing for an artist to really push the critics and the writers to think more creatively. And by doing that, often again, being very specific about different kinds of frames to which you can see your work. Where this is coming from me is that I have a book that has just come out called Productive Failure, Writing Queer Transnational South Asian Art Histories. And the whole idea with the book is each chapter really attempts to write a transnational South Asian art history, and never quite achieves it because it will be unending. And yet for each of these different frames is important. So, I have a chapter with the work of Sai Twombly, with Natvar and Babsar. Those aren't really necessarily artists that you would think would be in the same frame. So I guess I'm just wanting to encourage all the artists to help or maybe give some direction to the critics and the institutions that aren't really doing this.
Yeah, I mean, like your biases are there, like even in my work, even when the language, the script I use, and I write, some of them myself now, but even when they are in English, because they are cursive in nature, when people see that, they think that is it, the arabesque quality in my work. And sometimes I face biases. I mean, I live in Texas, in Dallas, and then, I feel that people are kind of a little bit not sure, seeing some writing that looks like Arabic. And, I see a lot of other artists when they see something like English, and they can recognize more as that as opposed to maybe Arabic, Farsi. They get a little bit not too sure. So I feel that in my work, and people they're like, oh, I thought it was Arabic. And I saw it's all in English, and then they see some word, they're like, yeah, I see this. whatever word that, freedom or hate or something, they see that, they're like, yeah, okay, now I see some English words. So it's kind of, you have to, I think all of us or some of us, I don't know, we have to always kind of tell people, inform them. It's just like, sometimes it's just too much work, because being artists, you just want to do your work. You want to present or execute or, whatever you feel like, rather than, teaching all the time. So sometimes it's tired, I guess.
How much should we kind of, unfortunately, wrap up? Okay. I know there's some people in the audience that have questions as well, so hopefully throughout the 2 days you'll be able to ask everyone that. But I just want to thank everyone again for sharing this, really strong group of artwork. It was just really amazing. I'm sorry that we had to kind of cut you short each time. I hated having to say 2 minutes, 1 minute. Thank you again. Yeah.
Okay, so it's 11:25, so we're running about 20 minutes late. We do have coffee and tea upstairs and lemonade and water for those who need it. It doesn't have to be a mass exodus. It will be there all day long, and it's in the room upstairs to the right of this glass bridge. We'll take about just 5-10 minutes to switch over to the next panel, so feel free at the moment to go to the restroom, get refreshments. Our cafe is also open if you're hungry, right over there, and we'll be hopefully back here in 10 minutes if you can, so we don't get too late and have to have a working lunch. So thank you for your patience, and we'll meet back in about 10 minutes.